The Dodge Burn tool allows you to control the exposure of your image, and the name goes back to the original days of the darkroom when dodging literally meant to prevent the photosensitive paper from coming into contact with light from the enlarger that was going through the negative, and burning meant to expose the photosensitive paper to extra light from the enlarger to burn the image. Let's take a look at how it works. Like the other paint tools, it's got a lot of similar options here at the top. The mode has been blurred out, grayed out, but the opacity is there, which controls the extent to which the effect is applied. The brush tool is here, which lets you control the size and shape of the brush you're using, as well as the size tool, which controls the size of the brush, the aspect ratio, which will allow you to widen or make the brush taller. The angle allows you to rotate the brush a bit, and the dynamics allows you to control the way in which the brush stroke is applied and allow that to have an effect on the final effect that the brush stroke has. There's also the applied jitter effect, which creates a certain degree of randomness in your stroke. It creates a bit of a side-to-side effect, distance scattering as it's called. And the smooth stroke, which is essentially the opposite, it allows you to take a jittery stroke with your hand and smooth it out on the program. And the hard edge, which basically turns your brush from more of a paintbrush tool to more of a pencil tool. So even though we've got a nice soft edge on the brush that's selected here, if we check the hard edge option, it will create a hard edge for what we're using. Now, all of these effects up till now are pretty common among the paint tools, and if you need more information about them, check out the pencil and paintbrush tools, and it goes into a bit more depth on what they do. Now, the Dodge Burn tool has a few unique aspects. So first is the type, whether you want to dodge or burn. Dodging essentially lightens your image, and burning essentially darkens it. Now, the range affects what part of the tones, the color tones, are sort of affected the most. So if we were to dodge midtones, that means that colors that are sort of a midway, a mid-gray in value, will be affected the most. So if we come over to our image and we were to apply it here to this dark square, you'll see that the midtones have been lightened. If we undo that and we change it to shadows, that allows the darker tones to be more affected. And if we apply it over here, you'll see that the darker tones are lightened. So you've got a slightly less saturated tone overall. And the highlights will allow lighter tones to be lightened. This is a fairly dark image, so this effect is a bit more subtle. The exposure bar down here controls the intensity with which this effect is applied. It's turned up a bit right now, which will allow you to see the effect a bit more clearly. If we were to switch over to the Burn tool, this will darken the image as we apply it. So if we were to burn in the highlights on this dark square, you'll see it gets darker, but it's a bit subtle of an effect, even though this intensity of the exposure bar is turned up quite a bit. If we were to undo that and change it to midtones, you'll see that it also burns in the object. And the shadows also is a bit more significant since this is actually a bit dark overall. If, however, we were to apply it to this blue square, you'll see that applying the shadows burn option creates a bit of a darkening effect, but if we were to change it up to the midtones, this also creates a bit of an effect, and the highlights probably creates the most dramatic effect here. So the Dodge Burn tool allows you to lighten and darken aspects of your image, and while the shadow, midtones, and highlights controls which tones are most affected, in the end they are all affected. Overall, it creates sort of a scale of which they are all affected. So dodging will help you lighten your image, and burning will help you darken your image overall. So play around with that and see what you can do.